Welcome, everyone. This is Coaching in Session. My name is Michael Rearden, and I will be your mindset coach today. And today we're going to be talking about the aspects of health and wellness. And if health and wellness can be in one episode, this will be the episode. I've had some wonderful health and wellness nutrition doctors come on talking about health and wellness. I even had a grief coach come on talking about grief. When we combine them together, something magical happens. And in this episode, you're going to find the magic. You're going to find the energy. You're going to find just how much a person can go through and still come out beautiful. And that is where we are in life. We might be going through so much hardship, so much trouble, so much trauma. We can choose to allow that to turn us negative, turn us dark, to make us sour and bitter. Or we can choose to be sweet. We can be abundant. We could be positive. We could be optimistic for what's coming next in our life. And there's just so much more to life than our current situation. We can always grow. We can always prosper. When you learn what you need to do that, it's almost like finding the key to the locked door that's right in front of you. How can we start to get to the mindset that we need to make sure that we are going to be in the right state of mind? Is it going to be yoga? Is it going to be meditation? Or is it going to be all of the above? How can we begin to find ourselves, our true self? And how can we begin to take action so we can be the best version of ourselves today? And today we're going to do that in this episode with Mae Yoshikawa, who we are going to be learning about her journey, her path, and then her success. It's important for us to understand that people can go through a lot of hardship in their life, but they can still come out on top. So let's get into the interview with Mae and myself. Welcome, Mae Yoshikawa, to Coaching in Session. How are you doing today?
I'm doing excellent. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you so much for coming on and finding time to speak with us today, because we're going to have you on as a yoga and meditation teacher. And you do so much more than that. I want the world to understand that you have been on an amazing journey in your life and you have so much wisdom. And we're going to learn so much in this episode. But without me telling the whole world what you do, please tell the world exactly why you are so amazing.
I like to say that I look Japanese. I speak American English, but I found my heart in South India. At a young age, in my teenage years, my mother fell sick to a neurological disease, which led to a huge transition, not just for her, but for myself and for my family. And I had these enormous questions about consciousness, about reality, and who is a person to another person when these normal kind of capabilities of communication, even acknowledgement and looking each other in the eye is not existent anymore. That kind of led me to a journey of itself. And I actually, really the impetus behind it was that I got so sick as a result of the stress of that. But because of that downhill, I found yoga and I started meditation alongside yoga, which took me to India. The practice of yoga and meditation really gave me a spine to some of these big questions about consciousness that I was struggling with at the time. I spent a good 13 years keeping a house in South India where I was studying at the feet of the guru, as they say. I specialize in Ashtanga yoga. And then I became the first Japanese woman to be authorized by the founding school in South India. And then I would come back to Japan and travel all over and teach the yoga and meditation, which led me to starting my own studio, which is now fully online. And I also another kind of aspect of my passion is that I don't just like to teach and speak what I do. Obviously, I like to lead by example, by the way that I live my life, but I also like to write about it. The author aspect is the other side of what I do.
Right. And we're going to be talking about all of the writings in a minute, but I want to know about something you said. You were trying to find consciousness, or you're trying to find some awareness to some of the things that were going on in your life. Without maybe going into too much detail, because I don't know how private it is, what were some of the things that you were going through and facing? Because the audience loves to relate to the guests, because if you are going through something in your life and you can share your story, then you're a survivor, essentially, so other people can have hope and they can inspire to overcome what they're going through right now.
Yeah. When my mom's disease first started, it started with a little bit of amnesia, which is loss of memory. as well as misrecognition of three-dimensional features, meaning she could have a glass of water in front of her, reach to take a sip, and completely miss the cup. Now, all of these things that we take for granted about our consciousness and about our day-to-day activities, she started to lose. And the doctors told us that she would lose short-term memory first, and then eventually also long-term memory. Meaning I had questions like, how many more times will she remember my name? How much longer will she remember that I'm her daughter? And the doctors also diagnosed it as a terminal illness. They gave her like 10 years to live. She outdid that by another 7. But I had these big questions about consciousness and who am I and who is she when we begin to lose some of these most ordinary human capabilities that we so take for granted.
Would that consciousness be tied with health?
Oh, absolutely.
When someone is like getting older, for example, let's say they're in their 50s, they might start to feel a little bit more pain in their body. I know for me at an early age, I developed sciatica because I was running for a 5K. I got hurt in my training process for it. And I said, I don't care. I'm still going to run. And that was the mistake because I should have said, you know what, let me take some time to heal properly. If I can't run the race, I can't run the race. But I pushed through. And then after I developed the sciatica, and the only thing that helped me recover was yoga. I did Bikram yoga for several years, about 3 years. And after the first 3 to 4 months, I already started feeling so much better. Like the pain went away. And this was pain that I was taking painkillers for, like literally just to go to work. And I'm like 24, 25 years old, like having to take painkillers to go to work. And I was thinking in my head, is this my life? Will this be my life? And then my brother, he is really big into healing, into yoga also. And he told me about Bikram. And I said, let me give it a shot, right? Because I have nothing else to lose. Health is just so important. And my consciousness at the time was, I'm going to be in pain for the rest of my life. But I focused on my health and I found a practice that was healing to me. And I wanted to talk to you about that consciousness tied to health. Because when you saw your mom deteriorating and saw her health maybe going down in a spiral, you were maybe in a mindset of like, is this going to happen to me maybe? Is this supposed to be life? Like, am I unlucky? Like, what were some of the things that were going on in your mind and how you were thinking about health in that aspect?
That's such a terrific question. And I'm going to turn the mic on you just for a second to ask you, how do you define health?
For me, I define health as being able to do the things that you love. If I love to go to the gym, I would like to be able to go to the gym and to do my best to give 100% in it. And if I can't give 100% in it, then that means that there's some level of my health that is not at its pinnacle. And I have to do my best to get back to 100%. If I have to sleep more, if I have to eat better, if I have to do more like stretching exercises that might be able to help me get there, if I have to get a therapist, a trainer, that right there is health to me. Because if I can't be my best health, then I know I'm not going to show up in my day every single day.
Right. With my mom's thing, I was completely overwhelmed. And what happened was that I lost my health. I was like down in the dumps. I was a depressed insomniac. By the age 20, I was in such bad shape. I could hardly get out of the house. At the time, I recognized that my health was in pieces and I was helpless and I needed to do something about it. And I mentioned that because at the time, this is over 20 years ago, I defined health as something of the body. I wanted my physical health back. I wanted my physical wellness back so that even through the changes that my mom was undergoing, I wouldn't lose my well-being with hers, right? I needed to kind of hold firm. And that's when, after trying a few different things, I found yoga. Now, what the first yoga class did to me, I walked in there like it was going to be another sport, like I was going to learn something with my body and do some things and learn some postures, and hopefully it was going to keep me fit. But the first thing, of course, in any yoga class that any decent teacher teaches you is to put your attention on your breath and to move your breath synchronously with the movement of the body. Now, this threw me off so bad because I couldn't believe how simple it was. It's just your breath. It's not anybody else's. It's not anything out of the ordinary. You do it every day. It's just inhale, exhale. And the teacher is asking me to do the inhale with, say, raising your arms, or do the exhale with bowing your head down and forward fold, or whatever it is. And I was shocked that I would have the intention of matching this breath with that movement, this breath with that movement, but I sucked at it. I couldn't, for the life of me, get my breath and my body to work together. I was so disintegrated. And from that kind of a wake-up call, I began to realize that the disintegration signified an offness of my attention with my body, my breath with my body, and that the breath more than anything had to do with the state of my mind, because I was so anxiety-ridden, I was so scared, I was so tense, I couldn't breathe freely. And then, of course, if you can't breathe freely, you can't sleep deep, hence my being an insomniac. So I learned, and this took me years, oh my goodness, I learned that health is equally of the body as it is of the mind. And then eventually, of course, I learned that it also has to do with your spirit in the way that you want to express yourself in the world.
You said something early on, right? Like your health was deteriorating too while your mom's was. That's just grief at its finest. You're there, you're just thinking like, man, like this sucks, right? To see your mom, the person who raised you, the person that you love, and your mother too, I believe, right? Even see yourself like that in your child's eyes could be like in an awakening for you to say, I have to show up in my health. My child is not going to be going through maybe some of the same things that I've went through. You want to be in the best physical health that you can be, which is important. Where grief can make us do some crazy things, right? It can make us not show up. It can make us not be pronounced in our days. It can make us very still and stagnant. And we do have to learn a level of mindfulness there, because if we are not aware of who we are, what we're becoming, then when we do try to find our breath, it's very difficult, because our body and our breath are one. When we move our body, our breath should be in sync with that. And if it's not, you can tell. And it's very difficult to do yoga postures and your breath is not right or correct, because you are maybe putting extra strain on your body, maybe closing some passages for nice airflow to go through, especially like if you're doing like head to knee or something like that. That right there is going to cause a lot of people some claustrophobia, and it's going to be a lot of mental struggle for them. But the more you do it, the better you get. And every day is a journey when it comes to yoga, because some days you might be able to do a full moon posture and you can kill it. And the next day you can do maybe half of what you did the day before. Our body is alive, and we do have to listen to our body. And I think many people, they get into the habit of ignoring their body when it's screaming at them saying, hey, listen to me. I need you to show me something better than what you're showing me. And a lot of people struggle there, I believe.
Yeah. And grief, I find in my life, I mean, when that thing happened to my mom, I was too young to know anything. I was too young to even recognize it as grief, as loss. You know, I was just doing my best to get through it. And that had a lot of anger in it. You know, that had a lot of denial in it. And that just had a lot of overwhelm in it. I just didn't know what to do with it. And I remember one of the repeating thoughts in my mind, and I think I held that for a good 3 years before I recognized it, was why? I used to scream in my heart, why? Like, why mom? Why this disease? Why us? Why now? Why me? Like, why? That drove me nuts, because it wasn't a question that I was going to get an answer to. The pain of that grief was really kind of driving me lower. But like you said, with the repeated practice of yoga, I was learning to just observe my breath, just observe my body, like a true sense of getting to know yourself. And alongside that, because I started meditating, I was also learning to observe my mind, observe the thoughts and the thinking that are either working for me or, like in this case, torturing me. It took me 3 years, but I recognized that The question why wasn't serving me. So then it's not about getting an answer to the question. It became about letting go of the question. And then maybe eventually down the line, I'll think of a different question, or I'll think of a different angle, a way of thinking about it that will serve me towards health, as opposed to just ruining it for myself, right? We're like self-saboteurs at our best.
Definitely. And we do have to make sure that we are not the victims in our own life or the people who cause all the hardship. The world is tough enough. And the last thing we need is to be our own worst enemy. We do have to learn or teach ourselves how to love ourselves fully and understand where we are so we can make adjustments. As you went on that journey, you started to find a new passion, a new love, a new understanding of what you can accomplish. And you found a passion and an art in writing. And that was going to be a tool or a method for you to even learn more about yourself and to be able to express yourself in a new light. What were some of the things you began writing when you first initially started writing? Was it like personal development stuff? Was it just like diary stuff? Tell me about that.
Initially, I think when my first journal, I was 15 and I just started. It was an outpour of emotion, like whatever teenage anger and dissatisfaction because I come from a very reserved, socially respectful culture. I was born and raised in Japan all my life. I mean, emotional expression, not really, never in public. Like emotional expression for young women, forget about it. It's cultural. But it doesn't mean that we don't feel these things, that we don't think these things. Actually, a few years prior to my mom's disease, my parents had gotten divorced after 26 years of a happy marriage. I had all of these, like this confusion and this anger. So when I first started journaling, it was just an outpour of all of that for no other reason but that, I didn't particularly have a therapist or an aunt or uncle to speak to. I just needed to put this stuff out. And then in hindsight, of course, I realized that that was one of the healthiest things I could have done for myself because I kept real with myself without penting it up. And of course, when you write something out, the first thing that happens is that you can reflect on it as something outside of you, as opposed to something that's festering inside of you. And then the reflection began to help me gain perspective about my thoughts and feelings. Eventually down the line, I also then learned to treat my thoughts and feelings as something that I can be creative around. Like I can actually take the steering wheel and choose the perspective and the thought process that I want to engage, as opposed to, like you said, the thought processes of victimhood and other things that you don't want to stay stuck in.
I remember in college, I started journaling myself, and I have a rule when it comes to journaling. This might be more of a male thing or maybe a Western thing, where if you do journal and you have very negative emotions, you're not supposed to just reread them and live in those emotions like constantly. What I would do is I would write down all of the negative emotions, all the negative feelings, all the hardships that I'm feeling. And then I would never read that page again, or 2 pages or 3 pages or whatever I wrote. As soon as I was done writing all of my complaints, I started writing all the things I could do. And I would reread that. I just focused my mind on the things that I could do rather than the things that I was so worried about or the things that were causing me a lot of pain. And I know sometimes you do have to focus on the pain so you can start to heal the pain. But when your pain is like, I'm so stressed because I have to work and go to school, and then the stigma of you have to get good grades and be this awesome kid, for your parents, it could be a lot of stress on an individual. I put it all on a piece of paper and I said, what can I do today? What can I start now? And I started those micro steps to a better mindset, to more awareness. Today, I don't even have to write in a journal because I have learned just how to mitigate most stress in my life. I know how to navigate through it. I know how to stay on the right track. And if I do get stressed, if I do get grief, like I already been through that process, I have a good understanding of how to move through it. But at the same time, there's going to be people who are going through it for the first time. We don't really learn how to go through grief as children. or some children don't even learn how to regulate their emotions. It's something that's almost like a trial and error that many people have to go through themselves. And it's a journey. And when we can have people like yourself may come on, talk about that, hey, you're not alone. That right there is just an eye-opening experience for so many people, because they do feel alone when they're going through all this hardship, negativity, and sadness in their life.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful point you raise about, first of all, I mean, you're a mindset professional. So the journaling being such an effective method for someone who's just getting started to touch base with, well, how am I thinking? What are the thoughts that are on repeat in my mind? And then because when you write it out, then you have to become super conscious about it. And then, of course, you give yourself a choice. How can I change this? What are the things that I am empowered to do? And then the other thing I kind of want to dive into that you mentioned there is the nervous system piece. It's that, like you said, so many of us are raised in broken families, or even in whole families. There's a lot of like dysregulated nervous systems, a lot of emotions gone berserk, and people aren't necessarily grounded or respectful of each other. And that takes a toll on the way it's almost not even spoken about, like verbally, as you're growing up as a child in childhood, but that we're just surrounded by other grown-ups, other adults, maybe your parents or your aunts or uncles, that also don't know how to listen to their emotions and how to take hold of their thoughts. It just kind of seeps in. And then before you know it, that becomes your normal. Like that's the only way you know how to deal with your emotions, especially the ones that are called dark emotions and negative emotions, because people tend to want to run away from them, deny them, numb themselves through them, give me whatever I can to forget about these things. But can temporarily forget about them, but they're going to knock on your door again if they're in there. And at some point in your life, like it did for me, I think for many of us, it becomes a calling to wake up. Hey, there's a lost piece of you in there. A piece of you still needed to grieve. A piece of you still needed to mourn the loss. A piece of you is still angry about that. You don't want to admit it because it's like, I don't know, decades ago, but maybe you're still angry about that. And something needs to be released before your nervous system comes back to center and you can begin to rebalance yourself holistically again.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. A lot of people like to throw things into that dark corner of their life and they say, you know what, I'm not going to worry about this. The problem with doing that is eventually everything you toss into that corner is going to rot, it's going to smell, and it's going to start to bother you. And it can even get to the point where it is now cascading over you. And the moment you just, throw a little problem at it, everything topples over. And all those emotions that you have been trying to run away from rush into you, and you have to deal with that. And that is an unhealthy way to deal with emotions. Most people, like I said, don't know how to deal with the emotions that they are going to be dealing with in this world. But we can practice our awareness in emotion. And this is something I get very upset with, because people think emotional intelligence is the answer. Emotional intelligence is really good for children, 0 to 7. After that point, it's almost like, okay, now you need to start to look at the real world stuff, because you can't just say to a guy who's like, let's say 40-year-old guy, he lost his job. All right, if you want, you can cry about it. I'm more interested in telling that gentleman saying, hey, I understand you lost your job. It sucks. I know. But what can we do? We start to take action. So there's a difference between being emotionally intelligent and understanding your emotions and being able to express your emotions, and then being able to understand your emotions, but then still be able to take action. So what I do is a little bit different.
What do you do?
Well, exactly what I told you is like we focus on the action more so than just sitting with the emotion and talking about it. That's why therapy is different than life coaching.
I think what you're talking about is, what do we need to learn from the experience of that negative emotion or whatever kind of circumstance that's pressing on you in life. And we all go through these setbacks in life, like whether it's the sickness or the job loss or something turning out in a way that you just didn't think or expect in a negative way. And that's where we need to pick up again. And actually, that's the interface where we can most show ourselves who we are in the way that you choose to deal with this. Like, who are you in the face of this? And what will you learn from this experience? Because then you kind of use that experience in your life to become someone that you really want to become.
The part where it can get a little awry for some people is that they like to sit in their emotions too long without going through the process of getting rid of them. Like, I understand to sit with your emotions, to sit with the pain, but at some point you have to get up. So think of like grief, like we talked about grief momentarily. There is no appropriate amount of time a person can grieve or not grieve. Everyone is different. A grieving process for me might be 3 months. For you, it might be 2 months. You might say at 2 months, well, stop grieving, right? It only takes me 2 months, but everyone is different. So everyone has to understand, well, how long is it going to take them to go through the processes of healing? If grief is the problem, is loss the problem? Loss can be many different things: divorce, loss of a job, etc., right? Betrayal from a family loved one, so, something that could be a different grieving process or a different process of healing. So we do have to understand that there are going to be many different processes that we can go through. And I wanted to get into the last little bit of your writing, right? Because we talked about the beginning, you were doing the diary stuff and just beginning the emotions. But I wanted to fast forward to what type of writing you do today.
Let's see. Well, I think I'm going to talk about that from two different angles. One is that more recently, in my late 30s, I lost my husband to a sudden traffic accident. And we have 2 young boys. And obviously, it was a very shocking event for all of us. I was overwhelmed with grief. I shut myself off from the world. Initially, I told myself I'd give myself a year. And I think it turned out to be closer to 2 years. But during this time, I wrote for myself and for my healing and to gain awareness and to make sense of the things that I was so overwhelmed about. I wrote a memoir. Actually, I have 2 books out in Japanese, but it's the first time that I wrote a book in English. So that's a really kind of exciting aspect for me. I'm hoping for its publication next year. I don't quite have a date on that yet. So that's one aspect. And then the other aspect is in line with the teaching that I do around yoga and meditation. I have this method that we call in Japanese kakumeso. One of the central ideas to my teaching is this concept of the Japanese word kizuki, which is a realization or an epiphany. But something, once you notice something, once you see something and realize something, you cannot unrealize it. You can't go back and pretend like you don't have awareness around that thing you just saw. Kizuki is kind of like an awakening that can happen in pieces. So I developed this journaling method that I use monthly now in my courses, where I guide the students in a 3 journal prompt process that's designed to outpour your thoughts and emotions around the theme, and then B, gain reflection and perspective around it, and then C, after a short guided meditation, shed light on a new perspective, a new way, like you said, like beyond what you had formerly allowed yourself to see. How can you then take this in a new perspective and move forward with it? So this journaling method is something that I've been working on a lot in the past couple of years.
Yeah, and I could tell it's working, because just from our conversation today, we talked about so much grief in your life and all the hardships you had to go through. Today, you can be here with us, and you are such a beautiful person. When I just feel your energy, when I speak with you, I am full of love and passion, like just for being around you in your presence. I know the audience are going to feel the same way, because it is important that we understand that people go through hardship in their life. It's not just us. And I understand, I'm guilty of it too sometimes. It feels like the world's on your shoulder, and it feels like you're fighting it alone. And it feels like you're this lone warrior. But there's so many people that are there with you, that want to be there with you, like Mae, where you guide people to healing. You guide people to a better mindfulness, a better awareness of themselves, so they can begin to live more fully. And that is an important place for many people to be. And as we begin to wrap up, I would love some final words from you. and for you to please tell the audience where they can find you.
Sure. I guess in closing, I'm going to add in there that as a yoga and meditation teacher, I've been awarded here in Japan, and I do a lot of work with Adidas, the sports company globally. So there's all of this like hype around it and stuff. And a lot of people ask me, what are some of the things, the gifts that yoga and meditation have given you? And the attention tends to go on like the pretty stuff and the fancy stuff, the health, the wellness, the flexibility, the posture, whatever. But I want to say that one of the core things that repeated practice of yoga and meditation gave me is an understanding and love of discipline and persistence. Like that, I think these are the essence of some of the things that made me get up again and made me, because when you're moving towards health, when you're working on your mindset, you might like fall off the bandwagon every now and then. So you fall, get up, do it again, get up, do it again. And that's really been my recipe. I just want to throw that in there in closing for anyone who might be on that aspect of their journey at the moment. The best place to find me is on Instagram. My handle is MaeYoshikawa. I like to post things in both Japanese and English, so you can find like health and wellness, mindset related stuff there. And you can also check out my homepage. It's maey.live.
Perfect.
And thank you so much for the work that you do. I love having this conversation with you.
I loved having the conversation even more. And I'll definitely toss all of your links in the description box below. People can easily find you. We just had an episode on immersions. If they don't know Japanese, then the process of immersion will help them learn a second language, because it's going to invoke so much more when you give yourself a goal and you find accomplishment at the end of it. And even if you can't get there in a day, in a week, in a month, understand that motivation might not be always there, as you said, but discipline is the key. Discipline is going to keep you going. Some days you're going to wake up in the morning and you're going to feel your nice warm sheets and it's going to be raining outside and you're going to say, maybe not today. I want you to turn that around, and I want you to say, today is today. And I want you to take action just like Mae takes action every single day of her life. I want to thank you so much, Mae, for coming on, spending a little bit of time with us today. Great conversation.
Thank you so much.
All right, everyone. I would like to thank you so much for watching that interview with Mae Yoshikawa and myself. What went on in that interview is that we talked about the aspects of healing through an understanding of self. Yoga and meditation is going to be a journey that each of us will go on. Now, you don't have to call it yoga. You don't have to call it meditation, but it is an awareness of your breath, of yourself, of where you are right now. Even if you like sports, for example, you like running, you like swimming, all of those people who are the high achievers in their field, in those sports, they go through the same process of internalizing something, thinking about it, envisioning it in their life, turning it into reality. At some level, we do the same thing, or we should do the same thing. Sometimes people think their dreams, their goals, their aspirations are too far for them to reach. So they say, why bother? What's the point? They live in scarcity. They live in pessimism. But we can turn that around. We can say, you know what? I know I'm going through some hard points, some hard times, but it doesn't mean that this is my life. This does not define me. And something I love to say is that you can allow your situation to define you, or you can allow your situation to refine you. When it refines you, does it refine you into something better? Does it make you stronger, more resilient, more happy? Sometimes we look for happiness, we look for the goalpost, but we are just faced with so many hardships. We're just faced with so many twists and turns, and we might not know up from down because we are just in a whirlpool of emotions, and we do have to learn how to deal with those emotions. I don't know if you caught this in the interview with Mae and myself. She has a program, she has a process that helps people through this. That process is going to walk you through in a 3-step process. That is going to be what many people need. How can I learn myself? How can I go through a process that's going to help me heal? And it's so important that we have that in our life, that we have someone that's going to guide us. I talk about it again and again and again on the podcast. You have to have a coach. You have to have a mentor. You have to have a guide, just like Mae, who's going to be able to guide you along the way, who's going to be able to see what's going on in your life, who's going to be able to say, hey, I know what you're going through sucks. I might not be able to fully comprehend what you're going through. But even in this episode, my life, my grief is not even a fraction of what Mae went through. There's a level of me that can see her strength, that can see the pain that she had to go through. I don't know her pain, but I can empathize with her. From there, I can learn from her. And we can learn so much from Mae. We can learn so much from what she's doing, what she's bringing into this world, from her yoga practice to meditation, to her journaling program, to all the articles and books she's writing. That right there is going to be what people need. That right there is going to be the start of true healing in their life. Because true healing is going to begin when you have finally said, enough is enough. Some people wait until the breaking point. Some people say, my life is not in a good place. Let me start to fix this. And some people say something is off. I think I can use some adjustment. So you might be at that beginning stage. You might be at that middle stage, or you might be at that brink of falling apart. Regardless of where you are, always making sure that you can have someone at your side, by your side. We're not meant to be by ourselves. We're not meant to be in this world and go through and fight it alone. We have to find people who are going to help us, embellish us, and lift us up and make us better than what we were. There's going to be a coach for you. There's going to be a mentor for you. There's going to be a healer for you. There's going to be a guide for you. I can guarantee it. If you're going through hardship in your life, if you're going through a hard moment in your life, I believe Mae is going to be a great resource. And I would love for everyone to follow her. Check out her social medias once more. Check out her writing. And then begin the process of immersing yourself in her culture, in her mindset, in her life. Because when we do that, we can start to say, she has accomplished some great things. I can accomplish great things. Just how people think certain things cannot be done, the moment one person does it, everyone else follows in suit. Roger Bannister, the 4-minute mile, going into space, the race of all the countries, getting satellites, right? It can't be done. It can't be done. The Wright brothers, we can't fly. We can't dive deep into the ocean. Year after year, person after person, we break records. Running records, sport records, swimming records, whatever it be. We break the mold. We set the mold. So what mold will you set into your life? What type of practices will you implement today that are going to help you for tomorrow? Might be meditation. It might be yoga. It might be an understanding of who you truly are. My name is Michael Rearden. I'm a mindset coach. If you have any questions, you can email me coachinginsession@gmail.com. And I will see everyone on the next episode of Coaching in Session. Until then, everyone take care.